This is part one of the video series I'm doing on making brass instrument rotary valves, all on manual machines. There seems to be a lot of arguments on whether rotors that are made on CNC are fundamentally better than rotors that can be made on manual machines, and it's not true. It depends on who's running the machines and how closely they're watching their tolerances. So, my shop as it is now is all manual. Eventually, I like to have CNC to do a lot of these operations, but it's what I have, what I can afford at the moment. So, this part's going to cover the rotor. So, the rotor is the actual part that spins inside of the casing. There's a few different steps. First, we're going to cut the slug. This is a slug. This is 7/8 round C360 brass. We're going to cut that off of a bar. We're going to part that off to a pretty specific tolerance, because that tolerance is going to help us base all of our features going up that we're going to do that's going to give us a good start. I cut them, so this is going to be a single rotor for a rotary trumpet. So the length of the finished valve is just under 2 inches, including the spindles. So I cut them off to 2 1/4 for the slugs, and then the first quarter is cut out for the stop arm dog drive. So this one's been worked on a little bit, but we're going to start from scratch. So we have our stock in the machine. This is 7/8 round C360. We're just going to use a scribe mark at 2 1/4. We're just going to scribe this off, and we're going to part it at that line. Actually, we're going to part it on the inside of that line. This is the way I've done it. So it's fairly repeatable. This is probably the lowest tolerance operation we're going to do. It's plus or minus 10 or 15 thou. It's not important. It just gives us a pretty good starting place, rather than using saw cut blades. So usually I would have a bin here so that they would just fall into it, but I'll grab this one. This is just getting us in the ballpark where we need to be. So now that we have our blank, it is a nib on one end, and the other end was faced off. I'm going to go grind off this nib because it'll cause problems later down the line. Then I'm just going to grind a little chamfer on each of the edges just so it goes in and out of the collets a little easier. Just helps you. It all gets cut away anyways. So for this next operation, I have the collet out, and beauty of 5C collets with internal threads, we're going to be using a collet stop. This is just what I would do what I did when I ran 20 of them earlier. You have the collet stop because now we're going to be turning a feature, and this will press into the adequate depth every time. And since we're not using a collet closer, it'll actually stay in at that depth without any extra pressure needed. So when I was doing this earlier, you have the collet in the chuck. And then I have here, if you can see that, yeah, this is my micrometer carriage stop. So what I did, since we're turning a conical rad about 1/4 inch in, I set my carriage stop to 1/4 inch using a Travidile, and then I lock my carriage stop in so that when I'm coming to that depth, it's the same depth all the time, so that we're referencing the stop that's behind the material, and then we're referencing the stop that's holding us at that dimension. And then also, if you really want to set this up like a turret, you can just have this cutter, since this is brass and this carbide and this lathe for that matter, this is a pretty stout lathe, they can take that full 1/4 inch depth of cut that it needs to get to that dimension right on, because most of that dimension is going to get machined away anyways for the drive dog. So you don't have to be too worried at all about surface finish, because that's all going to get cleaned up later. So get this set up, and then we'll run. Okay, so I have my stop set up. I have the machine locked. The only thing that's not set is the depth of the cut. I'm not going to do this in one pass just because it would be guessing because I haven't set up one before this. I'm going to do a couple different cuts. So I'm at 665 RPM, 2 thou per rev. So I'm going to use the power feed to go most of the way, and then I'm going to hand jog it to get to out to the stop, just so I don't crash. Now I'm disengaging feed, and I'm just going to jog it in. So the dimension we're trying to hit here is 0.400. So that's going to form the arc of our stop arm guide dog. Okay, so we're on size there. I'm just going to clean up this face because that's where we're going to register when we cut the ports. So I'm going up against the stop, pressing into it a little bit, and then I'm going to back off and clear up that face. So now that's the feature we have. I'll give you a close-up on it while we're drilling the center. Okay, so there's our feature here. This is going to be where we mill the guides for the dog. And now in the tailstock here, I have a center drill with the shaft collar. It uses a stop. And I'm just going to come in here and drill the center for when we drill and tap that 632 for the stop arm rotating screw. Nice and gentle on center. And then I'm not going to really force the shaft collar up against it, but once I feel a change in the cool of the tailstock, back off. So now, get close up. We have that feature turned down, and we have a center drill in the center. So now we're ready. Now we're ready to mill flats.